Vulnerability is powerful. But there's another kind of vulnerability we have to be aware of, and that is not just interpersonal vulnerability, but vulnerability to the world. Now we're talking about all these people in here. I don't mean on stage for effect. I mean vulnerability in the sense that we don't know if what we do is going to work. We have no guarantees that this work we will do as a leader and a person and an influencer in the world is going to pay off, or that the world is going to think it pays off. We have no guarantees that people are going to say, yeah, you've succeeded, you did a good job. You know, I love books and movies about heroes. Since I was a kid, I read all the biographies, and I love every book. They all follow the same pattern, don't they? There's this character, and he wants to do something, and then he looks like a fool, and everybody's criticizing. I mean, gosh darn it, from what's that movie I just thought of with the ants in it? Not Ants, but the other one with a Pixar. Bug's Life. Same thing, you know, and they reject him. What, you've watched it, you know it is. So they reject him, and then he looks like a fool, and then in the end, he triumphs, and he's been redeemed and vindicated, and they carry him off. Every story is like that. And yet, we as leaders cannot undertake the important things that we're doing in this world for God, knowing or believing that we're gonna ever be vindicated for that. Now, ask yourself this under the influence of truth serum. How many people here are prepared to be a leader and never be vindicated for what you're doing? Now, you know, for every Nelson Mandela who finally got out of prison and was hailed for what he did, and there's a million other people who died in prison, right? And forever Mother Teresa, who people recognized, and she didn't really want it, she shunned it, and people said, well, man, she became a nun and gave her whole life to the poor, but look, we all know her now, isn't it? She's famous. There's thousands and thousands of other nuns in her order who nobody knows. And for every great leader who did something that people said, yeah, it worked out well, there's people who never saw the impact of their work and who died considered fools. Who's in? Who wants to do that? I mean, I will tell you right now, I can't wait till I'm that person who's ready to do that and who welcomes that. But right now, I am gonna tell you, it is not very easy for me to consider being one of those. And yet we are all called to do that. We are all called to do that. See, if we can calculate, I sound like, calculate, hello, Mike. Calculate the ROI of our work and see that we're gonna get the credit for it someday, that's just math. It's only when we have no guarantee of it that we're gonna do the right thing as leaders. And yet people don't like to be vulnerable to the outcomes of their work. They like to know, like, I think I know what's gonna happen, and I can see the payoff is gonna come in about this amount of time and in this way. And yet the greatest leaders, what I find interesting, as I said before, as Catholic, you know, 2 popes got made saints this past weekend, and Pope John Paul II. I remember after he died, like everybody went to his funeral and like, oh, he was a great man and now he's become a saint. Well, in his life, we don't remember this, but he was pretty much hated by the world because he had the courage to stand up for the truth of Christ, and people didn't like that. They found that offensive. And people, if you look back, the media hated this guy. Most people in the secular world hated this guy. Someone tried to assassinate him. And it's easy to look back and go, oh, look at it, all worked out well for him. And it does, it works out well for all of us when we follow God, but not necessarily here. And man, do we want to be one of those? I hope so. And that's not meant to sound overdramatic, it's just the truth. You know, Jesus, the ultimate triumph, right? Easter, which we just celebrated. Victory over, and you know, Easter kind of is like the end of the movie. Like, yay, Jesus won, you know? And it's wonderful. And he ascends into heaven, and it is. I mean, it's beyond what we can describe. And yet, 11 of the 12 of his followers were martyred. Can you imagine? No, what are you guys doing? He proved I'm right. I mean, come on now. I mean, this is supposed to be good for me here. So even when we know victory has been assured for us, we are going to suffer if we're truly leading. Who's ready? Who's ready to be leaders?